$750 billion to help fight crisis and the effects it has on the economy. The proposed plan comes as many seniors feel as though the government has forgotten about them. So what are your thoughts on this, everybody? Tell me in the comments down below. Is President Biden doing all that it takes to send out the fourth stimulus check, or do you think he's not? Some of you are going to be eligible and entitled to claim a fourth stimulus check this year, and there are a few requirements that you have to meet. So more stimulus definitely being passed soon in Congress, and President Biden spoke at a press conference about a wide range of issues, including legislation that he would like to see passed by Congress in 2022. There was one particular type of stimulus relief that the president made clear. It's very high on his list of priorities. President Biden spoke about the Build Back Better. That's a large-scale piece of legislation based on his campaign promises that the president has been hoping to get passed in Congress. Now, Biden indicated that there are two really big components that he feels strongly about. He went on to explain that we expand the child tax credit. So this relief legislation, everybody, called the American Rescue Plan Act, authorized $1,400 stimulus checks for all eligible adults and dependents. It also provided additional money to payments and parents in the form of an enhanced child tax credit. And it's worth around $3,600 per child. President Biden has announced that he wants to renew the expanded child tax credit in the Build Back Better, as well as accomplish a number of other things to help Americans across the nation. Right now, there are just 50 Democrats in the United States out of 100 total senators. Republicans are able to block most pieces of bills through a procedural move called a filibuster, which requires 60 votes to overcome the filibuster and move the bill forward. But Democrats have a few opportunities to get around the filibuster, using a process called reconciliation, which allows a bill to pass with 51 votes. Kamala Harris can serve as the 51st vote. And that would mean any bill that President Biden wanted to get passed in Congress is going to need at least 10 Republicans or more and unanimous support from all Democrats in the Senate. But if the president wants to take real action and get more stimulus aid sent out to Americans, then Biden has the authority to pass an executive order. This order can enact the Build Back Better bill into law and send more stimulus checks to Americans as soon as possible. And Representative Pramila Jayapal, the chair of the Congressional Progressive Caucus, has already sent the president a letter urging the Biden administration to use executive action on the stimulus aid to Americans. In addition to this, the United States faces a national debt of $30 trillion. People are saying that President Biden must do more, but really get it done. Tell me what you think in the comments. So we have a lot of good news. To talk about with the fourth stimulus payments, and I want you to keep on watching this video to find out the most important stimulus news. I always do my very best in answering your questions, folks, so stay until the end. Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, and President Biden are all talking about stimulus relief money. And everyone, momentum is finally building on Capitol Hill for more stimulus checks to be approved. Now, Senate Democrat Ben Cardin, the chair of the Senate Finance Committee, expressed optimism this week. The chair of the Senate Small Business and Entrepreneurship Committee led discussions about more stimulus payments. He said the primary focus in talks has been to replenish relief funding for restaurants after a previous batch of funds allocated by Congress ran out of money months back.
Grassroots activists standing up and saying, you know what? At a time of massive income and wealth inequality, maybe, and Chuck, this is a radical idea, but maybe, just maybe, government should represent the needs of a struggling working class and middle class, and not just the 1% and wealthy campaign contributors. And I think all over this country, people said, look, there are massive problems exacerbated by the pandemic. And I think President Biden looked around and he said, you know what? We've got to address those problems, not worry about the rich and the powerful. So we are beginning to make some progress in dealing with issues that have been neglected for decades.
I'm curious, your focus, when it comes to seeing these plans get passed, how important is the pay-for part of this conversation? How much of this in your mind is you're willing, you know what, deficit spending, these are investments, you'll get return, and how important do you think it is that you reform the tax code and use that to pay for this?
Well, I think, number one, most importantly, we have to deal with the crises facing this country. We have massive income and wealth inequality. Half our people live on paycheck to paycheck. Got to raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Got to do that. We have an infrastructure that is collapsing. We have got to address the existential threat of climate change. And when you do that, Chuck, when you make those investments, we create millions of good-paying jobs. We are the only major country not to guarantee health care to all people as a right, the only major country not to have paid family and medical leave. We pay the highest prices in the world for prescription drugs. Hundreds of thousands of kids can't afford to go to college, and millions leave school deeply in debt. Well, you know what? You got to address those issues. Meanwhile, you got two people on top who own more wealth than the bottom 40% of America. You got major corporation after major corporation not paying one nickel in federal income tax. Warren Buffett, one of the richest guys in the world, reminds us that the effective tax rate for working families is higher than it is for the billionaire class. So in terms of pay for, yeah, I do think we need progressive taxation, which says to the very rich, Biden says the cap should be, the floor should be 400,000. Yeah. Nobody under that should pay more in taxes. But yes, the very rich and large corporations should start paying their fair share of taxes to help us rebuild America and create the jobs that we need.
If you have to make the choice, because some of your Democratic Senate colleagues seem to have a little bit of nervousness about voting for some of these tax increases, but they will vote for the spending. Will you take the spending if it doesn't come with the tax increases?
Well, the devil is in the details, obviously. But I think what has got to happen is we have got to begin addressing the enormous crises facing this country. And that is what I think the president is trying to do. I think once we start discussing these issues in the Congress, there will be differences of opinion. But I think there is a consensus, at least within the Democratic caucus, that now is the time to start protecting working families and the middle class, and not just the 1%.
One of the things not included in the president's plan was some things that you wanted to see, including lowering the eligibility age to Medicare, in particular being the biggest one there. And I want to ask you about it in conjunction with this statement that James Carville made, and I want to bring it up here. It has to do with Joe Manchin. He says, the Democratic Party can't be more liberal than Senator Joe Manchin. That's the fact. We don't have the votes. And I bring this up because Senator Manchin has said he's not in favor of lowering that eligibility age. Do you think that was probably why Joe Biden didn't include your provision in his plan?
No, I don't think so. James Carville can live in his world. I don't think he's terribly relevant to what happens in Congress right now. Here is the story, very simple story, is that right now, for the last 55 years, since Medicare was developed in 1965, it has not included coverage for dental care, hearing aids, and eyeglasses. And I can tell you, in Vermont and all over this country, you got senior citizens whose teeth are rotting in their mouth, older people who can't talk to their grandchildren because they can't hear them, because they can't afford a hearing aid,